We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Gonna have fun here on a Tuesday in September. First of all, just so nice. A lot of episodes that we grinded through in June, July to get to these months where, frankly, I don't know how we're going to fit everything into the show. So we're going to open. We don't do this often, but listen, NFL Week 1 is in the books, and it was insane. I think I'm just going to take 10 minutes off the top, kind of talk about some of my reactions, my thoughts, my this, my that, from what was a very fun weekend, obviously ending on Monday night with the Vikings-Bears game. What a thriller that was. From there, we'll get to the meat and potatoes of the show. A lot of college football. Billy Napier, it keeps getting worse. It appears as though his number one advocate, number one confidant has officially flipped on him. We'll explain that. Deion Sanders going to his third-string quarterback. I actually love this move. Watched a little bit of the Colorado game just the other day, and this kid looks really good. And then we'll wrap. The big one Saturday, there's a couple really big games, but Tennessee, Georgia should have SEC title ramifications, college football playoff ramifications. We don't generally preview games as early as Tuesday, but this feels like the right thing to do for the mega showdown. We'll make our official pick on Thursday's show. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Overnight, we appreciate you guys. Overnight, we surpassed 60,000 subscribers. Producer Matt, you can go ahead and make a mental note. We'll be needing a graphic for that one to celebrate the occasion. 60,000 subscribers. Can we get to 70K? When I get to 100K, I get that plaque for this back wall right here. But we can't do it without your support. We so appreciate everything that you do for the Aaron Torres Pod. Also, if you listen on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating and review. If you don't listen on Apple, Spotify, remember, you can always download us on podcast as well. Before we get to the show, should mention, by the way, speaking of appreciate, speaking of support, we got to thank the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. You can see them right up there in this corner if you're watching on YouTube. So SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. And the great thing about SeatGeek that I love is, you know, they're customer friendly. They take care of their customers. They rate every ticket 1 through 10. Also, a green dot and a red dot when you're going ahead and looking. So green dot means you could go ahead and purchase. Red dot means maybe this isn't exactly the ticket for you. But just bring it up because this is the SeatGeek promise. They take care of you. They take care of their customers. They want you to have the best experience possible. You know how I know that? Because they actually have a special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. I'm not making this up. How about this? You want to go to any game, any concert, any show, any event. If you're a Tennessee fan and those Georgia tickets are through the roof, use promo code Torres. You get $20 off your first purchase. Again, it's not just for college football games, NFL, Major League Baseball, concert shows, whatever. SeatGeek.com. Promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com. Promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. With that said, woo, buddy, it is a busy Tuesday in sports. There's no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, we don't generally talk a ton of NFL here on the Aaron Torres Pod. We're mostly a college football show. But the bottom line is, listen, if you're watching this show, guess what? You were watching NFL all weekend. Okay, so I just want to take about 10 minutes off the top, just kind of share some thoughts that I had on the week that was, because it was an unbelievable weekend. We got a lot of college football to get to as well. But let's just talk a little bit of what we saw over the past, 6 days, dating back to Thursday. But it really culminated, of course, on Monday night. What a thriller that was. J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings rally to get the win. So a couple thoughts on week 1. Again, these aren't going to be, 19-minute segments on why the Mahomes dynasty is dead, but just some quick thoughts. One, that Monday night game was awesome. Obviously, an awesome ending to an awesome week 1. I'll say this. First of all, I've always been a J.J. McCarthy guy. I thought he got a bad rap in Michigan. Oh, he only wins because of all the talent around him. Well, nobody ever said that about Matt Leinart. No one ever said that about, whoever. Like even Stetson Bennett. It felt like there was some more positivity going into the NFL draft when in reality, we know the talent that he had around him. And so I've always liked J.J. McCarthy. And we saw like the guy's a winner, dude. Like I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but you go back to Monday night, he throws that pick six, they fall down 17-6, and everybody that for 2 years has been sitting on JJ McCarthy takes, he's not good, he's overrated. How do you use a number one overall first round pick on him? Guess what ends up happening from there? 3 straight scoring drives to end the game. He becomes the first rookie. I saw this stat. It's unbelievable. First rookie in NFL history to lead 3 scoring drives in the fourth quarter of his debut game. It's never happened before, probably never happen again, but they were down 17-6. Chicago did miss that field goal that would have put them up 20-6, but JJ McCarthy with 3 straight scoring drives. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Minnesota. I'll say this too. You don't want to overreact to week 1, but what I will say, that division now all of a sudden looks way more open with how bad the Lions looked. We'll get to them in a second, but great win for Minnesota. I think equally, like what a devastating loss for Chicago. First off, the story is going to be Caleb Williams, but we can't dismiss Ben Johnson at the end of that game. I don't know how many people were watching, a little nerdy, a little in the weeds. You know that on this show, we don't criticize. I'm not the guy that claims I know more than the guys who do this for a living. But, you don't kick it out of bounds late. For people who were not watching, they had no timeouts. Right before the 2-minute warning, they kicked it off. And basically, they needed to kick it out of bounds so that even though they would take a penalty, they would be able to essentially use the 2-minute warning as a timeout. It would have saved them some time, blah, 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 blah. Instead, the Minnesota return man returns it. They get under 2 minutes. They basically lose that timeout, and then they get the ball back with just a couple seconds left. So part of it was on Ben Johnson. With Caleb Williams, I'm not ready to just dismiss him as like he's not that guy. We're starting to get a pretty big sample size, right? Starts off 10 for 10 in that game, leads a scoring drive on the opening drive. The offense really didn't do much after that. Now, part of it, I will say, I will defend. It doesn't it feel like, I don't know. Part of it was not all his fault. Again, there were a couple sketchy penalties. Darnell Wright with a weird holding call that nobody, including the broadcast crew, could seem to justify. But it doesn't change the fact that after that opening drive, they really didn't do much. We'll see what happens this coming week with the Chicago Bears because they go to Detroit. Don't forget that. Week 2, they go to Detroit. Ben Johnson returning to Detroit. We'll see what that looks like. Really quickly, a couple other thoughts. Speaking of Detroit, I thought the biggest story of the weekend, I think they missed their window. And I know I'm not the only one that has said that. But the bottom line is, look, they were my Super Bowl pick last year. This was the Detroit Lions. And I felt like they had a window very specific to last year. Most of their best players were still on rookie contracts. Remember, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn could have been coaches a year ago, decided to come back. And I felt like, okay, both coordinators came back because they want to be part of something special, okay? So now Detroit loses both coordinators. A couple of their key offensive linemen retire or leave the team. And all of a sudden, you kind of saw a team like Jared Goff without a great play call and a great O-line. He's kind of not that great. Now, part of it might be the Green Bay Packers just, with Micah Parsons being a difference maker. But I just bring it up because it doesn't look the same, and I don't think it's going to get better. Listen, maybe they eke out 8, 9, 10 wins, get to the playoffs, but I think their time as a legitimate Super Bowl contender is done. They looked uninspired offensively, not creative, whatever. Again, maybe the Green Bay Packers are just that good, but I think they had about a 2-year window where they had a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl. They missed it, and I'm worried it may have passed. Really quickly, speaking of the Detroit Lions, speaking of their former assistants, we talked about Ben Johnson. Aaron Glenn, listen, I grew up in Connecticut. I'm not a Jets fan. I know plenty of Jets fans. I know they lost. Jets look kind of good, though. They played hard. Justin Fields, I thought that was the best game that I have ever seen him play. And so with the Jets, you look at that division all of a sudden, Miami's a mess. New England hasn't really made the step that we thought they were going to. Is it possible like the New York Jets aren't that bad? They will need that game from Justin Fields every single week. But if they can get some variation of that, he looked pretty darn good. We know the talent around him is good. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner on the defense, whatever. And so to me, it was just about very simply, are they going to figure out the quarterback this year? And if not, what does that mean? Not saying Justin Fields is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, anything like that. All I am saying is it possible? Is it just possible that they might be better than expected? They looked really good. You know who else looked really good? I got to give credit where it's due. Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought the Pittsburgh Steelers Aaron Rodgers story was actually like the least interesting story in the NFL this offseason. Just felt like Aaron Rodgers was washed up. Mike Tomlin had kind of passed his prime. Didn't really think it was going to work out the way that everybody hoped. Aaron Rodgers looked rejuvenated. 22 of 30, 244 yards. The game of, did you producer Matt, did I get lost there? Can you see me? Can you not see me? Okay, cool. Sorry, I thought I got lost there for a second. The quote from Aaron Rodgers after the game of, were you happy to beat Aaron Glenn? He's like, I was happy to beat everybody affiliated with that organization. I just thought, again, they looked the part. And again, you look at that division. We got a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans that watch this show. Shout out to all of our Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio listeners. I don't think Cincinnati is very good. I just, Joe Burrow gets better as time goes on, but I just bring it up. They did not look that good. Cleveland's whatever. All of a sudden, is Pittsburgh going to be back in that situation? 9-10 wins, get over 500, make the playoffs. They looked just a lot better than I thought. Aaron Rodgers, got to give him credit. Oh, by the way, they face the Seattle Seahawks in week 2 at home and then New England. So there's a chance they could be 3-0 as they get set to face Minnesota in week 4 overseas. A couple other thoughts before we get to some college football. By the way, if you don't care for the NFL, the chat's humming, so I know you guys care a little bit. Just a couple of thoughts outside of this, but we will get to college football in a second. Go back to Thursday. That Eagles win over Dallas. First of all, shout out to that rain delay that my wife was going to kill me because I told her, the game will be done by 11:30. No problem. We'll watch some TV, whatever. Yeah, that thing didn't end until the crack of dawn, okay? So as far as that game's concerned, listen, Philly wins. By the way, the Jalen Carter thing, listen, we already talked about the Jalen Carter thing because Florida had a player spit on somebody in the Florida USF game on Saturday. I said in a post-Jalen Carter world, you can't be spitting on people. I'm just sorry. That's completely unacceptable. Bring it up to say Philly gets the win. I thought the story was Dallas. Dallas, that was the best that I've seen them look in some time. And I was thinking about this. One, Dak, they talked about it during the game, appears to be healthy, best shape of his life. And if you look at him and you look at the way he moved, I got to be real, is like he looked, all these athletes every summer say, oh, yeah, I'm in the best shape of my life. Dak actually looked like he was in the best shape of his life. And all of a sudden, CeeDee Lamb is not going to be worse than he was. I do wonder if this team's maybe a little bit better. Listen, Brian Schottenheimer might not be the answer, but Mike McCarthy wasn't either. And maybe it isn't as much of a coaching downgrade as we thought from McCarthy to Brian Schottenheimer. Will be very interesting. They face the Giants in week 2. The Giants obviously are a total mess with that Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson. It's a weird thing. Russell Wilson was named the starter, but then there's a report that Brian Dable has already gone to ownership saying he wants to play Jackson Dart. So we'll end up seeing what happens, but what a fascinating story that is. Lastly, because I want to get to a lot of college football, Kansas City Chiefs. Listen, I know everybody has done the whole dynasty is dead thing 10 times over with the Kansas City Chiefs. By the way, producer Matt, if there's any good NFL particular comments, we'll get to them before we get to Billy Napier, so you can kind of flag those while I'm doing my last little thought here. Kansas City Chiefs. So listen, I know everybody does the whole, you don't want to doubt the dynasty, all of that. It looks kind of over to me. We all watched that game. The offense, once Xavier Worthy got hurt, they looked slow. They looked unathletic. Travis Kelce, listen, congrats to him on the engagement. I'm not going to make fun of him. I hope you live a long, married, healthy life, whatever. He's cooked. I mean, he can't get open. He's not the dude that he was even 2-3 years ago. And the defense really outside of Chris Jones, I don't really feel like has any difference makers. What I guess it was Friday night in Brazil reminded me of. You know what it reminded me of? reminded me of the Super Bowl last year. And I picked Philly to win the Super Bowl when they played KC. And I did pick Detroit in the preseason for people that are going to be like, Torres, you just said you picked Detroit last year. Picked Detroit in the preseason. But when we got to the Super Bowl, I took Philly over KC. I said, KC's better at quarterback. Philly is literally better at every other position. And it proved to be true. But I think it was kind of true with the Los Angeles Chargers as well on Friday night. You go back to that game. Remember, the Chargers don't even have their starting left tackle, Rashawn Slater. They moved Joe Alt over to the left side, and it's like they were running the ball. Justin Herbert had all sorts of time, and I just sit there and say, Kansas City. By the way, the only reason it was even close was because Mahomes was pulling these incredible plays out of his butt. I still love Mahomes. I'm not one of those that is like, he's overrated. No, he's awesome. He's great at what he does. I don't know how much help he has around him. This kind of feels like the Patriots. Remember the Patriots? They had the early run when it was kind of defense, whatever. And then those older defensive players retired. Teddy Bruschi, whoever. I can't even remember all the guys off those teams. Richard Seymour got traded to the Raiders. And they kind of had to rebuild. And then they kind of rebuilt in the more of the offensive Brady mold. It feels like we are starting to head into phase 2 of this Kansas City Chiefs dynasty. I think as long as they have 15, they're going to be fine. But I think bigger picture, it's hard for me to see them. I don't think they're as good as either Buffalo or Baltimore, who we didn't mention. I think those are the two best teams. By the way, yes, I was one of those people that turned it off at 40-25 with whatever it was, 7 minutes to go, 6 minutes to go. I flipped it back on to see that the Bills were going for 2 to tie it at 40. I saw it from there. I think Buffalo and Baltimore are both better. The Chargers, at least for one night, were better. Philly is miles ahead. I think it's going to take everything to, I don't know. You don't want to overreact to week 1. KC looks kind of cooked to me. Producer Matt, any NFL interesting comments before we get to the college football? We got to get to some Billy Napier stuff because there was a very interesting update over the course of the last couple of days. Darren says, don't you kind of feel sorry for Chicago fans? I'm a Kentucky fan. I know how they feel. Everything going great starting off only to have the bottom drop out at the end. It's a great call. I mean, listen, I was ready to lead the show today being like, wow, Caleb has a real coach. He's awesome. He looks like, Caleb Williams 3 years ago, year 1 at USC when he won the Heisman Trophy. Then the second drive started. Then the third drive started, and you're like, oh, there's still a lot of work to do. I actually don't really blame a ton on Caleb. He had a couple overthrows. But like I said, there was a couple questionable calls against them, a holding call on Darnell Wright. The defense, listen, you give up 21 points in the fourth quarter. That's not on Caleb. It'll be really interesting. This weekend, they go to Detroit. Again, a Ben Johnson revenge game. But yeah, that game did kind of have some vibes of the week 1 or the week 2 Kentucky game. Kentucky goes up 10-0 on Ole Miss, falls apart. Kind of the same with the Chicago Bears. Producer Matt, anything else before we get to the break? All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. Many of you are here for college football. We got to talk our boy Billy Napier. I don't root against people. I don't root for people to lose their jobs. But Billy Napier, a new report, his number 1 confidant, appears to be flipping. This feels like an episode of The Sopranos or something, but we'll take a quick break, come back, talk Billy Napier. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, If you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Couple interesting things in the chat. Wes says, go Vols. Bassin, Big Dog Bassin says, dogs on top. First time we've had Vol and dog fans arguing in the chat. I love it. Paul says, get to college football already. We're going to get to it in a minute. And a lot of you already excited. Tennessee, Georgia going to be the game of the week, says Darren. I'm taking the points in Tennessee. Well, Darren, we're going to preview the Tennessee-Georgia game in just a moment. Before we get to it, though, what I want to do is first of all, speaking of Tennessee, I want to go ahead and shout out our casino, our hotel, our partners, our friends at Circa Casino Hotel and Sportsbook. Okay, I say Tennessee because remember, in addition to the incredible facility that they have in beautiful Las Vegas, they have also opened up a new sports book at Mint, Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. That's basically the Tennessee-Kentucky border, okay? So if you can't afford tickets to the Tennessee-Georgia game this weekend, by the way, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off. If you can't afford those tickets, this is what you got to do. You got to go to the Circa Sportsbook in Franklin, Kentucky. The best spot to watch. It's a replica sportsbook to the one in Vegas. And here's the great part. In this world that we live in where you need all these apps, all these this, all these that, download this, download that, you don't need to do all that. All you got to go is to the Circa Sportsbook, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint, Kentucky Downs. Check it out. It's a beautiful facility. By the way, if you do go, always remember, tag me and Circa Sports so we know you made it, so we know the Torres Army showed up. Should mention, I'll be doing some live shows there as we get closer to basketball season, late October, November, December, etc. So I'll be making my way to Mint, Kentucky Downs, beautiful Franklin, Kentucky, the new Circa Sportsbook. But we appreciate Circa's support of the Aaron Torres pod. Let's switch gears because you know who does not have support right now? It's that guy right there, Billy Napier. Okay, so obviously, look, on whatever day it was, what was it? Sunday morning. We obviously talked a lot about the Florida game against USF over the course of the weekend. USF gets the 18-16 win. I'll say this. I listen to other people's breakdowns. I'm not trying to brag. I think we did as good of a job as anybody. Some people don't want to criticize Billy Napier. They want to stay in his good graces. They wanted this. They wanted that. Or, I hate to say it, they just don't know enough about football to break it down. But Billy Napier literally did everything that you could wrong as a head coach late in that game to cost his team. There's no other way to describe it. There's no other way to put it. From the getting the ball back with 2:49 left and running two pass plays, what do we have about, I don't know, what was it, 29 seconds or something run off the clock? USF doesn't have to call a timeout. To the fact that he has players spitting on the opponents. I'm sorry, in a post-Jalen Carter world, you can't be doing that. Oh, by the way, on top of it, the lack of him using his timeouts, not letting USF score. It was a total train wreck, okay? And so, listen, we talked about it on Sunday, and I stand by everything I said. And I don't think it's like some big, crazy, controversial take. Billy Napier's done. I mean, he's not getting fired today. He's not getting fired tomorrow, but he's not going to win the games that he needs to win to have the success that he is going to need to retain his job, right? I mean, you go through the schedule, 8 more games against ranked opponents starting this weekend against LSU, then at Miami, then Texas, then at Texas A&M, and that doesn't even include Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, on and on. It's just, it's basically over because he's not going to get the wins. It's really bad, and I feel bad. I'm glad that they gave him another year, but it ain't going to happen. And if you needed proof it ain't going to happen, I saw a very interesting report this week that kind of reflects that basically, like, any goodwill that Billy Napier had, not only with the fan base, but even in the administration, is basically over. Okay. And so to give you a little bit of context before I get to the report that popped up on Monday, got to go back to this time last year. So Florida obviously loses its opener in week 1 at Miami. To Miami. They get destroyed in the swamp. It was in Gainesville. I think I just said at Miami. It was in Gainesville. Okay. But they lose that game, come back, they play a nobody and win. Then they get smoked at home by Texas A&M in week 3. And you can kind of just tell right away. It's like, oh, this is not going well. But at the time, Billy Napier had a little bit of a trump card, right? The trump card was that the AD, Scott Strickland, was kind of tied to him. Scott Strickland, for people who don't know, he's been there since 2016. He was the guy that hired Dan Mullen, had to fire Dan Mullen, and then hired Billy Napier. And so the thought a year ago at this time was essentially that, like, look, I'm sorry. Bottom line is that we are not letting Scott Strickland make a third football coaching hire. There's an old adage that, you get to mess up once, but if you screw up that second time, the AD is out. Like, you're not going to get a third chance to make a coaching hire, okay? But so that was the context last year, was that Billy Napier was kind of tied to the AD Scott Strickland, and that if Billy Napier had to be fired, then Scott Strickland was probably going with him. And so there was kind of this thing. He had the administration support because the administration had no choice but to support him. What becomes interesting is a little news story that popped last week that otherwise would be meaningless except for what happened on Saturday afternoon against USF. Okay. So you go back to the USF game. You go back to the fact that in that game you lose, and in that game you're coming off this loss. But the story here, and you go back to last week, is the fact that prior to that game, Florida announced that Scott Strickland, the AD, had actually gotten an extension. Basically, Florida's sitting there saying, wait a second now, Billy Napier figured it out. The basketball coach you hired just won a national championship. Scott Strickland got an extension. And so I bring it up because I saw a very interesting report. Our buddy John Talty, he's doing good work over at CBS Sports. Last week, we talked a little bit about him with the Alabama Kalen DeBoer report. Well, he had another very interesting report this week, basically reflecting that a year ago, Scott Strickland kind of needed Billy Napier to succeed because Scott Strickland's job was kind of on the line with Billy Napier. It really ain't that way anymore. We got a couple quotes from the article. Producer Matt, you can pop them up. So this is from CBS Sports' John Talty. Strickland, this is last year, repeatedly defended Napier a year ago, in part because there was a belief their futures were tied together. Strickland told people privately he had the power to keep or fire Napier, but after already firing two previous hires in Jim McElwain and Dan Mullen — by the way, I looked it up. He didn't actually hire Jim McElwain, but he did fire Jim McElwain. There were industry questions on how it would play out in reality. In other words, would they actually, again, let him hire a third head coach? Ultimately, Florida made the call to keep Napier, and it paid off with a strong finish with wins over LSU and Ole Miss that made the Gators a trendy playoff pick this preseason. It continues. One source told CBS earlier this week, Strickland now does not have to be as loyal to Napier. He hired a men's basketball coach in Todd Golden that won a national championship, an important bullet point on his resume. A year ago, Strickland was nervous about the situation. Now he has the confidence to do what is needed. The money was there a year ago to fire Napier, according to sources, and will be there again if needed. It wraps with a quote from an anonymous source. Scott, the AD, was hoping it'd work out for his own sake a little bit, said the source. Scott wanted to preach patience last year. Now that he's got a new 5-year deal and some security, if Billy goes 6-6, is he going to do it? Well, first of all, I'll tell you this. If Billy Napier goes 6-6, he's going to do it. But listen, I think this article, and I think that particular quote, it really does a good job of contextualizing what the situation is at Florida. A year ago, the AD was tied to Billy Napier, and now the AD isn't, okay? And so, like I said, let me even backtrack. One of our interns, Aaron Torres Media, was texting me the other day about his specific school. We have all the Torres on this, Torres on that, Torres on the Hogs, Torres on the Vols, whatever. And he was texting me. He's like, man, the more I learn about college sports, the more I kind of realize how political it is. That's exactly what it is. It's very political. Everybody's fighting. Everybody's trying to save themselves. Everybody's creating alliances. And again, a year ago, there was a very strong Scott Strickland, Billy Napier alliance that just doesn't exist anymore. Now, I don't know what their personal relationship is, but ultimately it doesn't matter what their personal relationship is because Scott Strickland now has the upper hand professionally. As John Talty said, basically a year ago, Scott Strickland might claim that he had the power to fire Billy Napier, but did he really? I don't know, and it ultimately didn't come down to that. But now Scott Strickland knows that he can make that move without having to worry about his future. He signed a 5-year contract. He's going to get paid out. He ain't going anywhere. And so now it makes Billy Napier's tenure much more, fluid. What I would say, two quick thoughts on the actual report itself. One, This probably isn't a surprise, but I do find it interesting that it is acknowledged Florida has the money to fire Billy Napier. And I think in this NIL, in this rev share world where basically every dollar counts, every penny is pinched, I do think it's the reality that a lot of these coaches with huge buyouts, it's not just as simple as writing a check, right? Even I know that Jimbo Fisher was a once in a lifetime outlier, but it's like you get into these 30, 40, $50 million buyouts, these schools can't do it. It doesn't matter how it's structured. This is why, by the way, Mark Stoops ain't going anywhere at Kentucky if he doesn't want to. It's why Kalen DeBoer, that buyout's a little bit different because he isn't owed as much up front. But, even like, I'll give you an example. We talked about Mark Stoops, Brent Venables. I remember, Brent Venables, if he doesn't do this, he's not going to be back. And it's like, yeah, like if Brent Venables wins 4 games, he's definitely not going to be back. But they would have owed Brent Venables like $35 million to fire him after this year. Now, I don't think he's going to have a bad year, but it's just like the idea that we're just going to fire dudes after 1 or 2 bad years, it's just not the reality anymore. But at Florida, it's a little bit different. Napier's buyout is now under $20 million. By the way, they had the buyout last year, according to John Talty, but the buyout now is under $20 million. I think about half of it would be owed up front, and the rest is paid out. So all of a sudden, $10 million to get rid of Billy Napier ain't that much, and it's definitely not that much when you no longer have allegiance in the building that you once did. And so this is bad news for Billy Napier. I think it's a bad situation, and I don't think it's getting any better. I mean, to me, again, and we talked about this on Sunday's show, part of the situation with Billy Napier, part of the situation with what's going on with him, it's not just that you lost to South Florida. It's that you needed to beat South Florida because of everything else on the schedule. Listen, you don't have to be a college football insider, somebody who covers this stuff 365 to just look at the schedule and to realize how daunting it is, right? I think these next 4 games, even before the USF loss, we're going to define the season. I think coming into the year, you kind of just felt like, okay, at LSU, at Miami, Texas at home, at A&M. If you can go 2-2 in that stretch, that probably now looks like a 9-3, 8-4 type season, and now maybe you could keep your job. That is not factoring in the fact that the assumption is you're going to go 2-0 against Long Island and USF, okay? And so I just bring it up because now that you lost to USF, forget how you've actually looked. Just look at the schedule. The next 4, I just said, at LSU, at Miami, Texas, at Texas A&M. Then you get a break by only playing Mississippi State, who, oh, by the way, should be in the top 25 this week. I don't understand how they're not. Then you play Georgia and Jacksonville. Then you get Tennessee at home, Ole Miss on the road. And all of a sudden, let's not forget, that Florida State game does not look like a pushover like it once was. So now, all of a sudden, just forget finding me the 9 wins, the 8 wins that you would have confidently kept your job. Can you find 6 wins? It's hard for me to even find 6 wins on that schedule. There's Kentucky, Mississippi State, maybe. Then after that, kind of hard to find them, right? It's kind of hard to find them. Florida State is better than we thought. I think Tennessee, which we'll talk about in a minute, is better than we thought, even though they've historically struggled in Gainesville. So I just go on and on down the list and say, like, this guy's done, man. This guy is done. Listen, we got all of probably November and December to start talking about coaching candidates. But, dude, he had a window. He was the first guy I've ever seen that saved his job and flipped his fan base and gave his fan base confidence that he was the guy. And then, boom, it immediately disappeared on Saturday with that loss to USF. Just a bad look. All right. I do want to get to one more story before we switch gears and before we go ahead and get to the Georgia-Tennessee preview. That is the game of the weekend, as the chat has said. There's a very interesting thing going on with the Colorado Buffaloes right now. And I know a lot of people, you don't like Coach Prime. First of all, for people who are new to the show, I love Coach Prime. I think he's about the right things. I think he cares about the kids. And I think we have a story that proves, like, if you want college football to go back to the way it was to some degree, that it is about accomplishment on the field, that it's not all about NIL, that it's not all about paying players, that it's not all about this and that. I think we found something interesting at Colorado. Okay, so Colorado coming into last Saturday. So week 1, they lose to Georgia Tech. That was a game they could have won. Caden Salter, the high-profile transfer from Liberty, gets the start against Georgia Tech. He's okay, but he's not great. Colorado gets the loss. What's interesting about it, and by the way, Thank you, producer Matt. As always, we do have a Torres on Colorado account, Torres on CU on Twitter. If you're a Buffs fan, if you're a Coach Prime fan, make sure you're following Torres on CU. But I bring it up because, look, so week 1, they lose to Georgia Tech. Caden Salter looks okay. But remember, they have the 5-star Julian Lewis as a backup to Caden Salter. And I think there was a lot of talk of like, dude, you brought in this 5-star, one of the top quarterbacks in America. Is he going to get some run? And so going into last week, Coach Prime said, yeah, they're both going to play. He said, his exact quote was, I have a plan, and it became interesting, and I'll tell you why in a second. But Caden Salter gets the first 2 series. Then Julian Lewis comes in for the next 2 series. And so you say, okay, we're going to find out. Is it the vet? Is it the rookie? Is it the freshman? Is it the 5th, 6th-year senior? Okay. Then something interesting happened. And I actually had this game on, and I flipped it off, and then I turned it back on. And when I turned it back on late in the first half, Colorado gets the ball back. They're up, whatever. They're playing Delaware. Who cares what the score was? But I turn it on, and Caden Salter's not in. And Julian Lewis isn't in. And I turn it on, and this guy named Ryan Staub is in. Now, if you follow Colorado, you know the name Ryan Staub. He was the backup last year. 2 years ago, if you remember, Shador got hurt late in the year. They actually turned to Ryan Staub to start the final game of the regular season. But I bring it up because I turn on the game, and I was like, Ryan Staub is in? What? Then he throws a touchdown pass in that game. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. Then they start the second half. He's playing. They throw a touchdown pass again. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, this is a very interesting thing. Well, I bring it up because the game goes final. And all of a sudden there's all this Ryan Staub talk. RG3 was actually on the call for Fox. And he put out a tweet that basically said, Ryan Staub should be your week 3 starter. Well, I bring it up because we got official news on Tuesday morning, right before we went live. Ryan Staub, 3rd-string starter, is in fact going to be your starting quarterback going into week 3. They play at Houston on Friday night. That news via Pete Thamel. Producer Matt, I know we had the tweet. I'm sorry I didn't call for it earlier. Colorado expected to start Ryan Staub at quarterback for the game at Houston on Friday. Enter the Delaware game on Saturday, 3rd-string QB, 7 of 10 completions, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. All right, so let's talk about this decision. First of all, if you actually watched the game, if you actually had either the game on in the background, you listened to the post game. I actually went back to the press conference to kind of listen to see if Coach Prime said anything specific. And all he said was, yeah, I know what I'm going to do next game, but I'm not going to tell you guys right now. And I think even in that moment, it kind of felt like Coach Prime really likes this Ryan Staub kid. And he's done all the right things. He said all the right things. As I said, this was a kid that started 2 years ago, backed up Shador last year. They bring in 2 different quarterbacks this past year. And guess what? The kid never left. The kid never entered the portal. He never left. And if you need an indication of just how much Coach Prime liked this kid, I want you to listen to what Coach Prime said. They did an on-field interview after the game. Now, obviously, because we can't show the video, but here is the audio of Coach Prime talking about his quarterback, Ryan Staub. Ryan Staub also is interviewed. You can just tell the affection that Coach Prime has for this kid. Play the sound.
Guy who came in just before the half and balled out for you.
I saw what I've been seeing at practice for the last few years. Like, this is who he is. This is who he's always been. He just needed opportunity. That's all he needed.
Well, you're a team first guy. You're a backup to Shador. Stayed on this team this year with 2 quarterbacks coming in. Why?
I had a dream, and I saw something, and I just wanted to chase it. I love being here. I love playing for Coach Prime. And, man, I'm just so blessed I got the opportunity. All I needed was that opportunity, and we got more work to do.
Took advantage of it. Coach, how are you going to manage these 3 quarterbacks going forward with Houston next week in Big 12 play?
I got a plan. Like, I had a plan coming into this game. I have a plan. I don't know if I'm going to disclose it until we get to our destination, but I saw what everybody else saw today. Martin Luther Staub, that's what he said. He had a dream, right?
And, Ryan, what did you see from your team's performance here in a turnaround from week 1?
It was good, but we got to be better. We got to be better. We got to fix a lot of things, and we got to be sharp going into next week, and especially the rest of the season.
Appreciate the time, guys. Enjoy this win at home.
I love this kid, man.
Love you, Coach.
Guys, back to you.
He said Martin Luther Staub.
First of all, how about I'm sorry. Martin Luther. I'm not even trying to be fake laughing here. Martin Luther Staub, I had a dream. I died when I heard that this morning, okay? But you can tell. You can see the affection that Coach Prime has for this kid. I love it. I think this is one of the coolest stories in all of college football, and I think this is the right move by Coach Prime. First of all, as far as the decision itself, listen, I think it's the right move. Listen, what do they say? The eye in the sky don't lie. And if you watch the first two games, listen, I'm not rooting against Caden Salter. I'm not rooting against Julian Lewis. I think certainly Julian Lewis has a bright future in college football. But if you watch the first two games, I think Caden Salter, I don't know if he was nervous. And by the way, maybe it's not all Caden Salter's fault. But, maybe he knows there's a 5-star right on my back. Maybe he knew in the back of his head, hey, this guy that's been in the program is outplaying me in practice. I don't know what it is. But if you watch Caden Salter, it felt like the decisions were rushed. It felt like he just was never really that comfortable in this system. And again, I don't know if it's just because he's nervous, just because it's his, it's a new school, it's a new system, or if he knew, hey, I got a 5-star on my butt and I got this guy that's been in the program on my butt. But he didn't look good. If you watch Julian Lewis, listen, I'm not going to criticize Julian Lewis. 17 years old, okay? He reclassified. Remember, he was the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2026, reclassified to 2025, goes to Colorado. But if you saw the game, he's still 17 years old. He'll turn 18 later this month. That's kind of incredible. He just was not ready for that stage in that moment, and that's okay. Doesn't mean he won't get there. But if you watch the game, Staub was by far the best option. And I'll tell you this, I give Coach Prime credit for making the decision that he did. Let me also kind of wrap by saying this too, is that if you are somebody that misses the old way of college football, because I'll tell you what, every single episode I do, every single show I do, I have somebody in the comments saying something to the effect of, I hate this new world. I stopped watching college football. I hate NIL. The players have too much power. The agents have too much power. I want the old days. I'll tell you this. There aren't very many old school coaches left in college football. I think Kirby Smart's probably one. There's a few others. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, is the old school coach that you want. Everything that people think about Coach Prime is actually the exact opposite. And I think this is a perfect example, right? Listen, we don't know the NIL setup at Colorado. It's not, what it is at other places. But I guarantee you, probably a good portion of their NIL budget went to Caden Salter when he committed to Colorado. Julian Lewis, I'm sure, is making very good money. By the way, he was in I think a national Taco Bell commercial. I could be wrong. It might have been local. But I bring it up because very clearly those two guys have been getting the NIL deals, the NIL endorsements, the NIL this, the money, that, whatever. And I bring it up because I think in a lot of other places, the coach would feel pressure to be like, we're paying these kids a lot of money. I got to pay them. I got to play them whether they're actually the best option or not. And where I give Coach Prime credit is he's saying, listen, there's one dude in this locker room that gives our team the best chance to win. He wasn't the number 1 transfer quarterback in the country. He wasn't the number 1 recruit in the country. He wasn't a 5-star, but he shows up every day and does his job. It's Ryan Staub. And I don't care what the critics say. I don't care what the outsiders say. You know what this actually kind of reminds me of? And it didn't really end up necessarily working out great for this specific guy. But do you remember last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, early in the season, Mike Tomlin was basically was playing Justin Fields. They were winning, but then Russell Wilson came back. He was healthy, and Mike Tomlin made the decision unilaterally without anyone else's input to play Russell Wilson. And he was asked about it, and they said, why did you do it? He said, it was my decision. It was solely my decision. That's why they pay me the big bucks, because I knew that this guy was going to put us in the best position to win. And so fast forward to the Deion thing, I think this is the exact same thing. Is maybe at other places you can't do this. Maybe at other places you are beholden to agents or boosters or whatever. I think Coach Prime is just like, I'm running it my way. We're doing it my way. This guy has earned his opportunity to be my starting quarterback. So we'll see what happens. Listen, there's no guarantee that he goes on the field and he lights it up against Houston and they're great and they win that game. But it's clear that Coach Prime has seen enough in practice and in film and in games where this is the guy. And so I give Coach Prime credit. It would have been easy to stick with the transfer who isn't getting the job done. It would have been easy to say, well, there's pressure on me to play the 5-star. He's saying no. The guy that gives me the best chance to win, the guy that's going to help the other 82 guys or whatever it is in this locker room that aren't in the quarterback room, it's that quarterback, Brian Staub. I was going to say Ryan Salter. I was like, that does not sound right. Ryan Staub. I give Coach Prime credit. I absolutely freaking love it. Can't wait to watch Friday night, 7:30 Eastern, when Colorado plays Houston. I just love this from Coach Prime. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. We're going to come back. A couple of your comments, a couple of your questions. I see some Billy Napier stuff in the chat. When we come back, we do have to talk. We've got a preview. Tennessee, Georgia. Big game, Knoxville, Rocky Top. Lot to discuss. Quick break. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks, I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at Firebox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for Firebox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip. And oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit Firebox.com. That's Firebox.com, F-I-O-B-O-C. By the way, Firebox has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to Firebox. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at Firebox, F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you, Firebox.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. We're going to go ahead and preview the big game on Saturday, Tennessee and Georgia, in just a minute. We'll do our full preview on Thursday's show, but we got to get to Georgia, Tennessee in just a moment. Before we do, though, you know what else we got to get to? Our friends, our partners. We got to thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but it's that time of year. If you're like me, you spent so much time on the couch this weekend. Thursday night, Friday night, in the case of the NFL this week, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, Monday night. Probably see it in my face. I'm getting a little, you know what? Well, guess what I need? When I'm sitting on the couch, I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. My friends, that's where Cauley Puffs comes in. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs' story. Family-owned company, not far from where I live, okay? Joey, the founder, a huge sports fan. I was actually supposed to go to the Rams game with him on Sunday. Didn't really work out. But I bring it up because as he was sitting on the couch, he said, you know what? I need a snack that's healthy but delicious, something I'm going to love, something my kids are going to love. I need Cauley Puffs. These are the new age alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle. Healthy, great, fantastic, delicious. And here's the best part. You don't need me to tell you anymore. You can try them for yourself. This is all you need to do. Go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com. CauleyPuffs.com. Use promo code Torres. It gets you 15% off your any purchase. Not just your first purchase, not just your 10th purchase, any purchase, 15% off. You can buy one bag, you can buy 100. I know I just put up a 5, but I'm thinking 100 in my head. But you can buy 100, you get 15% off. Promo code Torres. Tell them Torres sent you. You want to support the show? It's that easy. CauleyPuffs.com. Grab a couple bags for the weekend. CauleyPuffs.com. Promo code Torres. 15% off. All right. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's wrap the show. So I'll say this. We don't generally do a lot of preview stuff early in the week. I think there's an epidemic, if you will, in this country of too many media members wanting to preview games early in the week. Like, I think there's this thing where it's just like everybody in the media is trying to be the first one to preview a game, to get out a pick, to whatever. I will say, though, there are going to be times this year where, like, on the Tuesday show, we're just going to have to talk about a big game that's coming up, and that is certainly the case. Saturday, 3:30 Eastern in beautiful Knoxville, Tennessee. Georgia, Tennessee. Looked it up this morning. Georgia, a 4-point favorite in the Circus Sportsbook, over under at 50.5. We're going to give you our first thoughts today, and then from there, we'll do our full picks on Thursday. Should mention, as always, we do the college football betting pod, which does deep dives on all the big games. The college football betting pod, that drops Thursday morning, and then Thursday morning, we will also do the Aaron Torres pod with all of my picks. Let's dive into this game. This is, first of all, great game. One, just an awesome rivalry. Two, like, the stakes in this rivalry haven't been this high in a really long time, right? I mean, obviously, Tennessee has gone through quite a lull for quite a bit of time. Georgia, prior to the Kirby Smart era, had some down years. Mark Richt was fine. But the point I'm trying to make, these last 4 or 5 years, these two teams have established themselves certainly in the old. If we still had East-West divisions, these would be the two premier teams in the East for sure, no doubt about it. But these are two of the best programs in the SEC. Georgia has gotten the upper hand. This is kind of the last kind of hill for Josh Heupel to climb. Has taken care of Florida multiple times, has taken care of Bama multiple times, hasn't quite figured out the Georgia Rubik's Cube yet. But remember, they haven't really played Georgia with their best teams in Knoxville. Well, that might be the case this week. So let's go ahead and dive in. I think, first of all, the coolest thing going into this game, this is the first national stage for Joey Aguilar, and we might dive deeper into Aguilar later in the week. But as far as I'm concerned, one of the best stories in college football. And I'll admit, even I'm guilty of maybe spending a little too much time talking about the guy that used to be at Tennessee, used to be the quarterback, because it is a fascinating story. But maybe we need to spend more time focusing on Joey Aguilar and the incredible story that he is. Multiple JUCOs, goes to App State, goes to UCLA. By the way, UCLA recruits over him. Never forget, Deshaun Foster had it wasn't really a quote, but it was a paraphrase quote where he said, I didn't like that kid's study habits. Booted him to the curb, goes to Tennessee, and there's no doubt Tennessee won that quarterback trade. Joey Aguilar has been phenomenal, or Joey Swagular, as they're calling him in Knoxville, early in the season, but 66% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns so far this year. He's looked awesome. He's looked comfortable. He's looked confident. I love it. But here's the other thing you got to remember about Tennessee, and this is why I was a little bit higher on Tennessee coming into the year than most, is one, schedule is never easy in the SEC, but you get a couple of those bottom-tier teams, Vandy, who maybe is just better than we realize, Kentucky, we'll see what Arkansas is, whatever. But two, everyone gets so excited about Josh Heupel and the offense in the pass game, probably because of Hendon Hooker, probably because of what he did at UCF. But the bottom line is, if you follow this program, you know it's about the run game. It's about the defense. And I thought it was really interesting. Kirby Smart, both coaches had their media availabilities on Monday. And I thought it was really interesting. Kirby Smart basically acknowledged, like, hey, let me see if I can find the exact quote from Kirby Smart. I don't know if I have it. This is what he said. This is what Kirby Smart said. He said, they're built around running the ball and stopping the run, and they're really good at both. And so, again, I think if you're not a Tennessee fan, you think there's this perception, they just throw the ball 50 times, put up 70, whatever against East Tennessee. That's who they are. That's not who they are at all. You know, they've been, I believe, in the top 4 in the SEC every single year in rushing under Josh Heupel. They run the ball really effectively. Remember, last year, Dylan Sampson was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. And then defensively, they just get after it. And I think what's especially impressive to me, and by the way, they're running the ball again really well this year, if I did not set that up or establish it properly. Multi-headed monster. This was another thing Kirby Smart talked about, was basically acknowledging they have a bunch of backs that they want to send your way. Sorry, I got a little itch on my nose here, but they got a bunch of backs they want to send your way. They're all big. They're all physical. They're all tough. Star Thomas already has 3 touchdown runs. Deshaun Bishop is really good, on and on. And so I just bring it up because I think Kirby Smart acknowledged, like, y'all think that this is just some team that throws the ball around the field. They're defined by the run. They're defined by the pass. They're really good. Defense, once again, looks very good. Program I give credit to. You lose players year over year, and some, it's the oldest cliche in football, is that some schools rebuild, some schools reload. Sometimes you have a good team, but not a good program. Tennessee is officially a good program, and I think that's something that Tennessee fans should be really proud of. As far as Georgia is concerned, let's go ahead and give them credit. 2-0. It's interesting. You want to give them credit. They also have played Austin Peay and Marshall. And I think what's interesting is, like, even Georgia fans were a little like, what did I just watch after that Austin Peay game on Saturday? Now, in defense of Kirby Smart, that was a game where the start time got moved up. The schedule was weird. I think it was pretty clear. They just wanted to get through that game and get to Tennessee. They just wanted to get that game in and get to Tennessee, but they're 2-0. I think what's interesting about this game, obviously from the Georgia perspective, Gunnar Stockton, this is a kid who has started a college football playoff game, played in an SEC championship, won an SEC championship. This is his first career road start, though, which is kind of intriguing to me. Kirby Smart basically said this week, he's like, look, dude, we'll be honest, we practice year-round for noise in road environments. This isn't something that he's going to hear noise at practice for the first time this week. He's like, we practice this year-round. But it's easy to say that now. It's also much easier to say that, or it's easy to say it now, but we'll see what happens when there's 100,000 people in orange, yelling at the top of their lungs. So we'll see what happens with Gunnar Stockton. I think the other interesting thing, two of their starting offensive linemen this last week left the game with injuries. Now, both are expected to play. We'll see what they look like against what's obviously the best defensive line that they faced. And then I think what's also just interesting is how does Georgia run the football? It's easy to forget this last year. And by the way, this is a quick side note. This is why I kind of defend Carson Beck, is because Carson Beck last year did regress, but his receivers didn't help him out, and they didn't really have a run game. The run game has been much better this year, but again, is it a byproduct of facing Austin P and Marshall, or is it the fact that maybe, just maybe, they're much improved? Defensively, I don't think there's a ton to report back from Marshall and Austin P. Really good defense. They got dudes everywhere. You trust Kirby Smart, top 10 in total defense, top 10 in scoring defense, giving up some yards through the air. But again, when you jump out to big leads on teams, they throw the ball more. I'm not going to freak out about that. But I'll just tell you this. I'm just fascinated by this game. I think the two big X factors, we'll make our official pick in this one on Thursday's show. The first big X factor, obvious, right? It is what is, how does Gunnar Stockton play on the road, and how does Joey Aguilar play in his first SEC game? With the Gunnar Stockton stuff, like I said, it's not that I don't trust Gunnar Stockton. I do think it's easy to say that we simulate noise at practice, and it's another thing to go on the road and actually perform in that environment. And then from Joey Aguilar's perspective, I just, how does he look in this first big game? Syracuse is good, but Syracuse is what they are. This is not the same as facing Georgia, even if it is at home. The other factor that I would say, too, I think this is very interesting as well. I think the O-line and protection is going to be very interesting. I mentioned Georgia. Two of their starting offensive linemen left the game last week with little nicks and bumps and bruises. Kirby Smart didn't seem too concerned about either of them. But what if they can't play? We'll get updates throughout the week, but what if they can't play? What if they're not ready to go? We'll see what that injury report says. And it's worth noting, one of them, by the way, is a true freshman, Juan Gaston, who, of course, is making just his third career start first on the road. So we talk about Gunnar Stockton's first career start. What about a guard making his first career start? We'll see how he holds up. Obviously, look, he's a five-star kid. He's playing at Georgia. He's going to be fine. But again, a lot of new faces on that O-line in a tough environment. I think it's also intriguing with Tennessee. David Sanders. Remember, David Sanders, the number one offensive tackle in last year's high school class, has not played each of the first 2 weeks because of a shoulder injury. Well, he's expected to be back. How does he look in his first career start if he, again, is on the field? So we'll see what happens. We'll make our official pick. I'll tell you this. My early lean is Tennessee. Tennessee plus the points, Tennessee to win outright at home. And I saw some people in the chat say the same earlier in the show, is that you look at Tennessee, and I see a team that is confident. I see a team that's playing well. Yes, they have a couple issues. Should mention their two cornerbacks are banged up. So how does that affect Gunnar Stockton? Maybe in a positive way. So I don't make picks on Tuesday, right? Again, what did I just say a minute ago? Like all these other media outlets, they want to make picks on Sunday and Monday. It's like, I need to see who's actually playing before I start making picks. My early thought is Tennessee. I am a Joey Swagular truther. I believe in what they're doing. All right, I'll tell you what, we were all over the place today. We just talked a little NFL. We talked a lot of college football, Billy Napier, Deion Sanders making a big move. We should mention again, we do a full college football betting show. Just search college football betting with Aaron Torres. We'll do that on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we'll make all of our picks. All my picks also at AaronTorresOnline.com. All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Appreciate everybody's support. Busy Tuesday morning. Appreciate everybody's support. If you're not subscribed to the show, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we appreciate your support. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram. A couple things before we get out of here. One, Charlie asked, can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? Absolutely not. By the way, we got to preview Ole Miss, Arkansas. That's one, because I think Arkansas, could they possibly pull the upset? We'll see. Also, shout out to Darren tuning in from Australia. Darren Trooper, he says it's the middle of the night in Australia. So what time were you getting up to watch Kentucky get their brains beat in the other day by I guess they didn't get their brains beat in, but get beat by Ole Miss. I don't know. Anyway, we appreciate your support. Lucas had some really nice things to say about the show. Great show, AT. We appreciate your support. Appreciate the support of our partners. SeatGeek.com. Use promo code Torres. Gets you $20 off your first purchase. Collypuffs.com. Use promo code Torres. Gets you 15% off any purchase. $1, $100 gets you 15% off. We're going to get out of here. Be back Thursday morning. Darn it, do we appreciate your support. By the way, hit 60K this week, so thank you all again for your support. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick. You F-head. Unblock me. We'll be back Thursday morning. Picks, preview. Probably talk some more Billy Napier the way things are going. Aaron Torres.